All right, so today we have Simon Balin Builder. Simon is an endodontist turned real estate developer. He's got about 40 to $50 million worth of projects in the pipeline. He's in the process of exiting his practice for an 8 to 9 figure potential exit, and a lot of other things going on. And the really interesting thing is Simon's in my coaching and mentorship program. We've been working together for about a year, and we started with his first project. So now we're fast forwarding to, I don't know, what's it been, about 18 months maybe?
Yeah.
Total time frame, and from 0 to 40 to 50 million in projects, exiting your practice, and lots of great things in the future to come. So we're going to dig into all of that. Simon, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank you for having me, especially on a Sunday morning.
Yeah. So got to carve time out. You're busy, man. So I
Yeah.
guess this is the only time. And being a medical professional, dental professional, oftentimes evenings and weekends are the only time you have to do these types of things.
Yeah, actually, the development's keeping me a little bit more busy than the dental and medical side these days, but busy nonetheless.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've got a lot of dental professionals, medical professionals that I coach and mentor that are transitioning out of the practice, into full-time real estate investing, real estate development, a lot of different things. So let's talk about your evolution, because we started, like I said, about 18 months ago, and with your first project that you were doing ground up, a mixed-use development. So kind of tell us about that. How'd you find the land, and let's just talk about the process and the evolution of that project.
So interestingly, on that project, when we first met, I was actually bidding on a project right across the street from that. And just it wasn't penciling out, wasn't making sense in regard to some variances we needed, some wetland issues. And when we were on one of the first phone calls with the town, at that time we were in the middle of COVID, so a lot of the planning board was happening over the phone. They mentioned that there was a development, actually a civil engineer that knew about a development across the street that might work much better.
And to
So
clarify for everybody, so you were building dental practices, you had your practices, and then you were building for other people. So you had a building company where you were doing build outs and things like that, right?
correct. So construction wasn't an issue. It was just taking it to the next step, and that's really why I felt that I needed to meet with somebody and work with somebody that's taking just raw land and develop something out of it, which is what my dream was to do at the time.
Okay. Yeah. I just
So
wanted to clarify that. So you had some building experience, build outs, nothing ground up yet. So you're in the process of getting the permits, and they tell you, hey, there's this land across the street.
correct. So we looked at what was being proposed. It's in a village district of the town that I actually live in, which has a lot of restrictions. On that one, I don't know if you remember, but even during the initial phases of that, the development looked great. The numbers penciled out. We went into purchase and sales. You look at all the numbers, everything looked great, except for we had some issues with site work on that one. If you remember, just we're looking at the plans on that, and just there was a road going through ledge, there were units placed in the ledge, and you advised let's buy land adjacent to it, and we did that. We saved tremendous 7 figures on land costs, and that's where the whole development game started. So that project's ready up and get up and running. And now we've kind of transitioned to other projects. I've got a large 240 unit where we're in the third phase. We're just about to start moving dirt. We've started moving dirt. We cleared the trees, but we're going to start with our vertical. Just weather's clearing up a little bit here in New Hampshire. And we have another deal that actually came through the mastermind. So even though one-on-one coaching has been incredible, you created the mastermind group that I think we had our first meeting end of January 25th, somewhere around there. And one of the other people in the mastermind group, Peter, reached out to me because he said he'd seen my video with you previously. He's followed me on Facebook, and he had a deal in Maine. And now we're under contract. And we met the 25th on the mastermind. The next week he came down. He saw a couple of our projects. We started moving dirt on that project you mentioned in Windham, New Hampshire. He saw our project in Londonderry, New Hampshire. And then he brought this project, and now we're going to start moving dirt on that one about April 11th. So the speed at which we've taken that down, with your help, of course, has just been amazing. So not even 3 months from putting in a letter of intent to getting it under contract to start doing our horizontal, and we'll go vertical and have units ready to lease.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like you mentioned, so when you came to me, I think you found me online, YouTube or something. You took my courses. You knew you wanted to do that project you were looking at, so you reached out for the one-on-one coaching and mentorship, and we worked you through that process from identifying the land, doing the initial feasibility, then getting it under contract, then doing the due diligence, and then that retaining wall issue that came up. And on that one phone call, I'm like, why don't you just buy this land over here? It'll solve your, I think it was a stormwater issue or something. You won't have to build the retaining wall, save you a bunch of money, and you'll get some extra units. And I think that saved you about $3 million on the site work, and you got 10 extra units that were worth $1 million each.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, now we're keeping the units as rentals, but in this market, when we first decided to build the project, they were going to be units that would be sold in this area. They would go for over $1 million a piece.
And that was the whole other exercise. So not only just getting everything to that point, reworking the plan and the mix of units and all that to generate the highest and best use from a return on investment, we went through the whole exercise. Do you sell? Do you hold? Ran all those calculations, worked all that. And so it was, a lot of different exercises on that project. So now everything, you're going to hold the entire thing?
Yeah, we're going to hold all of it. I have an additional 12 lots for a single family home. So it's all going to be built to rent at this point. But that's one thing that I learned a lot from you. And I think it's instrumental if you're going to develop as multiple points of exit. So at each point, each exit was profitable. But at this point on paper, it just makes sense to take it all the way to completion and keep it long term.
Yeah. I mean, you can refi your equity out, keep the project and have cash flow. So it's kind of have your cake and eat it too. You can't pull 100% of the equity out when you refi, but if you can get all your money back and then some, and then you're cash flowing from that point on, that can make a lot of sense, especially nowadays, where do you put your money, so
Of course.
That's a great asset to own long-term. And then the mastermind. So obviously everybody knows, how powerful the coaching is. And, but the mastermind, so I've got people that I work with all over the world. I've been doing this, coaching and mentorship, as a business for the last 3 years, because people were just asking me, hey, can you show me how to do this? Would you coach me? So I finally created that, the program. And I don't know, I've got about 60 or 70 people, over the last 3 years that have gone through the program. And I've been connecting people one-on-one here and there. And then I started thinking, you know what, I'm just going to create a mastermind, bring all of my clients together so that they can, help each other out and do things. Because like I said, I've been connecting people and they've been doing stuff, prior, lending to each other, doing deals together. So now this mastermind has really, gained a lot of momentum, and, we're doing those weekly, calls. So talk about that a little bit. I know you met Peter through there, but just in terms of, how that, mastermind brings value to you in other ways.
So I think it's interesting. You always say you don't know what you don't know. And I've learned that ask questions, but who knows what questions to ask. So I ask as many questions as I can. You're always very responsive. You get back to me. I'll send you a text, and within an hour, you're already giving me a call. Let's go through this. But being in a mastermind, you see people who are 10 steps ahead of you, and the questions that they're asking or the replies to other people's questions, just things that I wouldn't have even thought of at this level. I mean, 50 million under construction right now, to me, is a lot. There are people in the group who, at this point, Viking Capital is getting close to $1 billion under management. There are some other people as well, 300-400 million under management. So it's just the questions are different. They're a little bit further ahead in their journey. So it's networking. So a few separate people have reached out to me, met some other dentists through the group that I followed through Facebook, but never had conversations. Now we're speaking almost weekly. We're actually going to be teaching at some of the same real estate courses together for dental groups. So it's networking. Like you said, for Pete and I, Pete's in Maine. We're an hour and a half from one another. So it made sense. He had about 30 doors of his own, but never developed anything. For me, taking on 30 units wasn't the biggest deal, but it kind of snowballed. He brought a deal that had 32 units. I was very happy to help hold his hand through the entire process. We went in as 50-50 partners. But because of that, now we have a piece of land right next door, which will allow us for another 100 units. So what started as 32 units, we can turn into 132 units. It's scaled up. Our value for building it, value engineering makes it much more profitable, and management of 32 doors at one location just makes a lot more sense. Wouldn't have met Pete if it wasn't for the mastermind. So one-on-one's great if you have personal questions, but when you're in a group, you're learning from everybody else's questions as well. And not all of us are developing. So they're plenty in the group that are just buying existing assets. So you learn some of that. If you're not buying existing, you hear the questions those people are asking. And just the group of people that you've put together, from people who are land acquisition specialists, lending specialists, buyers, brokers, or builders, agents. It just makes a lot of sense to have all these people in the same room and bounce your ideas off one another.
Yeah, it's awesome. And there's people doing all kinds of different things. Like we've got one individual in there that doesn't sell anything. He holds everything. He's got, I don't know, 250 doors, mostly single family, a couple of, 4 flats as they call them. He's building for rent duplexes, down in Florida. We have another couple of people in there that are builders and doing spec houses. We've got people that are, agents and investors that are doing a mix of build to rent townhomes. They have a bunch of single family doors. They've got multifamily properties. I've helped them really scale that, getting into the 20, 30, $50 million acquisitions of multifamily. Before that, they started with one house back in 2011. Now they're at 250 million assets under management. And, like you said, you got Viking. When I met them, I think they were 100 million in assets under management. They're at $1 billion now, after a couple of years working with me, and a couple other people in there that were house flippers and now doing multifamily, doing build to rent, buying businesses. There's people in there that are buying businesses. And then, the next evolution of your story. So that's what's really cool about the mastermind. You get all those different things and perspectives. And what's really cool, it's kind of like my background of doing everything I've done in development, buying, starting, building, and exiting businesses, just all the different things that you do and learn over the years that you can hear from people that they're doing right now. And the neat thing is we all started with nothing. We started with no assets. We started with, a business, and, everything kind of grew from there, kind of like the way you've done over the last, year and a half. And, you're just tearing it up. You're on a pace that, potentially is going to outshine all of them. And, with that, let's talk about your next evolution. So you're in the process of exiting your practice for 8 figures, potentially 9 figures with the growth of that. And you met a very interesting individual through that kind of, open your mind to it. You were like, I'm going to sell this and be done. And now you're thinking in a different way. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, we had a contract that was ready to sign. The group that was looking to purchase our offices, it's a strong group. We had friends that sold offices to them previously, and they've been very, very happy with the transition. We had meetings with, a few different DSOs and such, and even some DPOs. And it made sense. We would be out. We were going to focus. My wife and I were going to focus 100% on real estate. That's just kind of where we are in our lives. But we had one more meeting. So my wife said, "Just don't sign it. Let's go for the last meeting." And interestingly, about 15 minutes. It was an hour drive to where we're meeting them for lunch. 15 minutes before we get there, the gentleman who owns this, I call it a DPO. His secretary sends us an email saying who we're going to meet. We had absolutely no idea, because typically the owners or presidents of these don't come to that initial meeting. But this gentleman was very interested in being in our market, and he wants our offices. So we get there, and he's young. He's probably about, and we just do the math from what he told us in terms of his.
So you froze up for a second. You're freezing up a little bit. So how old is he?
I'd say he's about 48 years old, so a little bit older than I am. Is it clear now?
Yeah, you're freezing in and out a little bit, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So we meet him, and he looks to my wife, and my wife's young. She's in her late 30s, and says, "You're very young. Why are you looking to get out of dentistry?" So she says, "Well, we've been doing quite a bit in real estate, and we're more passionate about that in this point in our life. So we want to transition more towards full-time real estate." And so his response was, "Oh, well, I'm a developer, and I built 3,500 units a year." So my eyes lit up right away. There was very little discussion of dentistry after that. But my first question to him, after I realized the development that he's doing and the scale at which he's doing, is, if you're developing 3,500 units a year, why are you trying to get into this world? It doesn't make sense. And he actually entered the dental world. He was purchasing an existing asset. It was a full medical building, and it was an endodontist's wife. The endodontist passed away, and he was purchasing the building. Part of the sale was that he had to get the endodontic practice back on its feet, because she needed the funds from the practice of the sale as well as the building. So he kept his word. He got the practice up and running. And after he exited the endodontic practice and kept the real estate, he said, "This dentistry thing seems pretty profitable." And at this point, now he has over 150 pediatric offices, oral surgery offices, orthodontic offices. He also has about 150 Botox type clinics, all run by medical doctors, and a bunch of surgery centers. So he's very, very involved in the medical and dental space, and he's using cash flows from that to fund part of his real estate. Because, on the development side, we take out a lot of our, if you want to call it income, as equity, which really doesn't show up as income when you're trying to get the next loan for the next project. So it was a very, very interesting lunch, and it turned from us wanting to just exit to where he's kind of convinced us he's going to be purchasing a portion of our practice, but we're going to be opening several more in this area. And that's the model he goes for. He opens several pedo, ortho, and oral surgery offices, as well as surgery centers, and they all refer within a network. So it's a market that he's not currently in, and he's very interested in being in this market. And from that, I also hope to gain a lot of knowledge from him on the real estate side, which we're now working together on the real estate side as well.
Yeah, yeah. And the most important thing there, and and what I have taught you and teach a lot of people is, so the interesting thing you said is, why are you doing this when you've got this real estate thing over here? Why even mess with this over here? And it's all about building businesses that generate cash flow to invest in other assets. It's like you said, you want a business that just throws off cash flow. For a lot of people, it's your job until that becomes, a business when you evolve to the investor level, so you can own these businesses or multiple businesses that just kind of run on autopilot. But the key is you got to become a leader, delegator, motivator. It's all about who do you need to become in order to accomplish these goals that you have, and what does your company need to look like? So you're sitting down having lunch with this guy. He's got a team that runs the whole medical dental operation, and then he's got a team that runs the entire multifamily operation, and he's just right here just kind of delegating and leading those teams. So it opens up a whole new way of thinking in terms of, well, why get rid of that if I can put teams and systems and people in place that can kind of continue to grow that? Now, it may make sense to exit it if your growth path is limited, and then you have other aspirations or whatever. But if you can put a team, in place and just have those things on autopilot and own, whatever, that just, like you said, it generates that cash flow that not only you can, use as leverage to invest in the deals, but it's also cash flow to get the lending and get the loans and things like that. Because, a lot of times right out of the gate, if you're building big multifamily buildings, like they're doing, at that pace, throughout the year, there's not going to be a lot of cash flow in that business necessarily.
Of course. And you need to show some sort of cash flow if you're looking for lending, which is a very interesting point. We've had offers before from private equity firms. Here we're gonna bring the bag of cash. You open 100 offices for us, but all the work's gonna be on your shoulders. And we mentioned that during the lunch, and he's very different. He came from absolutely nothing. He grew up sleeping on a dirt floor in Mexico, to go into full scholarship, full ride to Harvard. And all the money that he's investing at this point, it's his and his family's money. So he's very conservative and he's involved. So he said, if I'm going to tell you, I want you to build 20, 30, 40 offices, we're going to do this together, I'm going to make sure everything works. It pencils out on paper. And I do the same thing with my developments. So he's very conservative. Seems like it could be a great team.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's quite a journey, over the last 18 months, and all starting from walking into an office to build out a dental practice. And they said, hey, there's a piece of land across the street. And then, from that to that project to the next one. And now, exiting and the potential opportunities that you have with partnerships through this individual, maybe in some real estate and other things. It's, it's amazing how life changes so fast, isn't it?
It goes quick. And you have to move quick on these, which I think is very interesting for the project that we're actually going to speak about today, which, like I said, we start the 25th of January, and we'll start moving dirt. We have a reply back from the planning board. We were supposed to have a meeting with them this coming Monday, tomorrow. And we sent them our plans for the project. They said, you know what, rather than having two separate meetings, we love what you've presented. Just come on April 10th and you'll have your finals at the April 10th meeting. So April 11th, we start moving
Cool.
forward.
Let's pull up some stuff. Let's take a look at some of the drawings of some of the projects you're doing, just kind of show everybody what you're working on.
So I'll show the drawings for this one.
And, while you're pulling that up, the key is, you saw that opportunity and somebody said, hey, there's a piece of land over here. You started looking at it, and this is the way the process worked. Once you decided, hey, I want to do this, you reached out to me and, brought me on as your mentor. And then we started looking at the land, going through the feasibility, meaning what do the utilities look like? What does the zoning look like? What's the, climate for approvals? Where's the water coming from? All these different things, stormwater, because, there was a part of the project already been developed. So there was some engineering in place. So, we went through all the critical items. How are they handling stormwater? Where is it? I don't see this on the site plan, and just all these different elements. And, what was cool is I would tell you, go do this, this, and this. You'd go knock it out. And then you'd send an email. Okay, here's what I found out. I'd go through that. I'd say, okay, now this checks. Now go through that. And you would go knock out the next set of tasks and come back. And then, all the way through the process from, doing the initial feasibility. Then once we understood that, we were in a position to go ahead and negotiate a contract. And we did the same process on the contract. You said, well, how do I do this? And of course, I've got those examples. And I think you used, that template contract or LOI or whatever that I had before the attorneys finally drafted the contract. We went through all the points, had a couple of back and forths with the seller, got on the phone with the seller. I helped you in that conversation and kind of working out a deal that worked for everybody with the seller. And then we got that under contract. And then the next step was, as we were going through the process, identifying that other piece of land. That was a different seller for the other piece, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And then we, worked through that, negotiated that. And I remember that was a little back and forth there. And then as that went along, then we started, well, what do we do? Now we got all this. What do we do? Do we build all houses? Do we build townhouses? We went through a couple of configurations and I told you, okay, look, you want to think about multiple exits. You could just sell the project fully entitled, go talk to some builders, find out where your values are, and then so you went and talked to some builders and found out everybody wanted that project. So you started thinking, well, maybe I should just, build these things myself. And at the time, we went through that whole discussion. Should you self-perform? Should you hire a general contractor? And you had building experience and design experience. So, for you, it made sense to, self-perform, which is what you're doing, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you ultimately decided to go ahead and self-perform, meaning hire your own project manager to come in. You're buying all the materials, you're managing all the subs, you're literally, managing the construction, which a couple of my clients do as well. Some use turnkey general contractors. We went through that whole thing and you ran the numbers and, things like that. And, went through that whole evolution. And then once we got to there, then thinking about the configuration, should we do houses up here? Should we do this? And I remember we changed the configuration and really maximized it. So it was a really interesting process. This is not that project, but
this is not that project, but
yeah.
We did the exact same thing here as well. I think I had the site plan for the one that we're looking at right now is actually behind me. So I always say if it's going on this back wall anywhere, it's not as much a vision board as just about to happen board.
Yeah.
So that's the site plan, but much of the aspects you discussed, we went over on this project as well. So building experience in terms of medical and dental, I think for commercial, it's the most detail-oriented construction you're going to do. And I grew up, my father did a tremendous amount of multifamily. So multifamily, you're building to code and outlets go where outlets go. It doesn't matter as much as it matters when you're doing dental or medical offices where a specific piece of equipment is going to go somewhere. So the construction doesn't scare me at all. But you have advised, and I'm going to start expanding to markets where it's not going to make sense to self-perform. So eventually, probably next year, if we're going to look at Tennessee or the Carolinas or Florida, we're definitely going to hire turnkey GCs for those. And that's great. But if it's in my backyard, if it's in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, we've built all throughout New England except for Vermont. We're going to build them on our own. It just right now it makes sense. I have a great team and they can knock these out. So on this one, this is the one from the mastermind that Pete brought to my attention. Just a site plan that we've presented to the planning board is behind me. And then what's on the screen, it's going to be 2 separate 12 units. Those are all 2 bedrooms. And then the building off to the right here, these are all 3 bedrooms. So it's a great little project. And the additional land that we purchased will allow for 8 more of these 12 unit buildings as well. So we're just going to copy and paste. And our site crew will go right from this site right to the next site, and foundations we'll just do them right in line, one right after another. So
yeah, it looks like a very efficient design. Let's pull up your other project. Do you have anything on your other one that we just went through, the big one?
The big one. Let me just give me 1 second. I'll just.
Yeah, and same thing, going through all the different exit scenarios, do you hold, do you sell some, do you sell all of them? I remember, we talked about all those and you went through and spreadsheeted all that out and, really helped, clarify, the thought process of, what makes the most sense. And really, ultimately, it comes up to, what you want to do, how you want to do it, what your end goals are. I'm just talking and filling space while you're pulling that up and things like that. So everybody's different. For me, I was a merchant developer. I like to build and sell. I didn't like to hold anything long term. I'd get it built, get it stabilized and sell it and move on from there.
So this is the 240 in Londonderry, but the project that
I said that I couldn't do
sorry.
it, so I went and
Uh-oh,
did it.
Sorry about that.
rocking out.
This is on my website, and the project that we started working on together from the beginning is this one here.
Yeah.
So now it's 50 townhomes in the back. Two of the buildings are built. It was a bank and an eye doctor. This will be quite a bit of medical as well. So we have an oral surgeon that's looking to go into the building, and a med spa that's taking up most of the second floor, or they're looking to do that. He does a lot of teaching as well as running his med spa. And if you remember when we started, this property line kind of where my mouse goes kind of ended right here. And all the units were placed in ledge, which right now we completely avoided after your recommendations. They're going to be very high-end units. So this is what the renderings look like at this point. And this is kind of what the planning board has approved. It'll be a nice clubhouse with a pool on the insides of the units. It's a higher end area, so definitely on a different level from some of the multifamily that we're doing.
Nice, nice. And you saved me the penthouse suite, right?
Yeah, there you go. It's all yours.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a beautiful project.
Thank you.
Now, where are you at there? You're just putting in the infrastructure now, or have you gone vertical yet on anything?
On these, we haven't gone vertical. Next door, and here we just started clearing land. Next door is the gentleman I purchased the property from. We're going to be doing quite a bit of the construction there. So I do have 8 single-family homes going in on that property. So we cleared that, and we're just about to start with the vertical there.
Okay, we're still seeing the interiors. Were you looking at something else?
No, same.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And this is what the commercial building is going to look like. So
okay.
Dry retail on the bottom floor, and then it was supposed to be almost all dental offices upstairs.
So go back up again. So go back up, because you've got a restaurant space there, and that was another part of our discussion, because you asked the question, should I go ahead and own and operate that restaurant?
Oh yeah. There's nowhere to get a decent meal in town, so I thought, you know what, why don't my wife and I will just build a restaurant. We'll make it happen. You definitely talked me out of that one. I'm glad you did. But we do have some restaurants that are looking to lease the space. We're being kind of picky, but I think that was COVID hit, or we're just past COVID. I forget when we first started talking about that.
Well, the restaurant business, there's one thing about the restaurant business, the easiest, fastest way to make $1 million in the restaurant business, start with 2.
Okay.
Start with 2.
Yeah.
You'll
Right.
end up with 1 if you're lucky. No.
Yeah.
So, the thing about that is a lot of people have that thought. They're like, I already own the space. Why don't I just go ahead and put my own business in there? And, the restaurant business is just, it's such a difficult business, especially right now, and it can bleed you dry quick. So, know your sweet spot, stay in your lane, lease out to other restaurants, make sure you have a good tenant that's going to be able to has a good business plan, that's well capitalized, so the last thing you want to do is, number one, be stuck where you got to show up and start washing dishes because, you don't have people in this environment. That's kind of what happens. Number 2, you want to make sure that if you put an operator in there, that they're going to be able to be successful. They're well capitalized. They have a good concept, good plan, good experience. Hopefully they're multi-unit operators, because you don't want to be turning that space over. That's the worst thing that can happen for a restaurant space. Second, third, fourth generation is constantly turning over. All of a sudden that space becomes, jinxed. People are just like, I don't want to mess with that space. Everything that goes in there closes. So, if you have those retail type, spaces in your portfolio, just make sure you have good operators that aren't going to go out of business.
Of course. I'm definitely glad that we didn't go into the restaurant business.
It's a distraction, I mean, I think sticking with the medical dental roll-up strategy, that's a much better focus and, much easier than restaurants. They're a nightmare. And, it's just getting more and more difficult with the labor situation. I mean, that's the biggest problem in the industry right now. And there's so many of them, there's just so many restaurants per capita. You're just spreading the labor out, you're spreading the customer base out. It's just slicing that pie into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces.
I agree. So did you want to take a look at the underwriting for the deal in Maine?
Yeah, we got a couple of minutes left. Let's just go ahead and pull that up real quick.
Sure. So I'll just share the screen again.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the underwriting. So yeah, this is a model that's in the development course, and this is the model that I've used over my career that was developed by my chief financial officer. And then you made some modifications to it, and I guess even your lenders are using this now.
Yeah, so they definitely like the form. I think the maximum before was taking it for a hold period of 15. We've just modified it so we can take it further if we wanted to. But on this project, for example, it's in Windham, Maine. It's 31 units. When Pete and I met in regards to this project, I told him we can definitely get the deal done if we each brought 10% to the table. So I put in our down payment would be 20%. He was comfortable bringing 10%. I was comfortable bringing 10%. And we knew we can get this project up and going. Pete currently owns about 30 units, 30 doors in that area. So he knew what the comps were, and it penciled out. Everything made sense. But even though we knew we're each comfortable bringing 10%, we took it to a bank. We're working with Pentucket Bank on this one, and they were very comfortable lending on the project at 75% of loan to value at the asset at stabilization. So when we got to that point, 75% of the asset at stabilization allows us to pull out about 1.3 million upon completion of the project. So I quickly, texted you, what do I answer? Do we just keep the equity in, work with the cash flow, or do we take that out? You quickly replied, oh, it's not even a question. Take out the equity and multiply your cash flow onto the next project. So multiply your success in that way. So that's how we've signed the underwriting at this point. And it makes sense. So we'll complete the project. We'll get it stabilized upon completion. About 1.3 comes out. I'm very conservative in underwriting. I put in my cost per square foot quite a bit higher than what I expected to cost us to build. Our rents are lower than what we expect. We don't have anything in for vacancy just because the market in this area, you really don't have vacancies. But even at quite a bit of, if you did have vacancies, even at 20, 30%, it still cash flows. So it's a great project. We're going to start in April, and we'll have some units up for rent within about 15 months after.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a good model. It's very efficient, simple, easy to use, and yeah, you can project it out a whole bunch of different ways.
Yeah, so I love using this model. So it tells you right now, Pete and I put in a hold period of 15 years. In this area, buildings get a lot of wear and tear. So at 15 years, you really don't have any maintenance at that 15-year mark. It's more of what your on-site handyman is going to take care of for you. So we know what our internal rate of return is going to be, what the cash on cash is, and what the net terminal cash is going to be on the project. Even though we intend to keep it longer, if one of us needed to get out at 15 years, we kind of know what the project looks like taking out that far. And then on the AM schedule, I've also kind of modified that. So you know what your loan to value, if you want to refinance at any point, what about a 70% loan to value would look like. And currently the banks in this area are anywhere from 70 to 75%. They're willing to cash out. And this with this particular lender, we are stuck in it for about 5 years with a penalty if we want to refinance, unless we refinance with them. And I think within the next, 3, 4, 5 years, rates will be back where we want them. And if it makes sense, we'll stay with them. If not, we'll move to another bank.
Yeah, pretty much all lenders are going to do that. If they're putting in a portfolio loan, if you're just doing a construction loan, then you get permanent financing elsewhere. Doesn't matter. But yeah, if they're going to do like this and keep it in house, some of them want to do 10 years, but 5 years is not bad, especially with where rates are right now, because arguably they should potentially be coming down in the next 3 to 5 years, hopefully, but you never know.
Yeah. And what's great about all the projects that I'm involved with right now, we have, I'm not very interested in taking on a loan where it's a construction loan and then hoping you can convert once construction's done. On all my projects, they're permanent loans from day one. So this one, for example, we have 24 months of no payments. So even though the interest is going to be paid through the loan, we have 24 months to build a project, stabilize it, get your cash reserves up to where the bank wants it, and then payments start. So it makes sense. And then we have 30 years fixed after that. And even in today's market, we're in the low sixes, which it's higher than some of my other projects, but low sixes still makes it work very, very well.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, Simon, I appreciate you carving some time out today to talk about these projects and everything. And, one last thing, if anybody is thinking about, joining into the coaching program or the mastermind, what would you tell them?
It's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. There's, I think Viking said it in one of his interviews with you. When I started in the real estate development side, I thought, oh, if I could have a portfolio about 50 million, I really don't have to do any dentistry at all. And Viking, I think, said to you at one point that he wanted to get to 1 billion, and your response was, "Billion's not the end; it's the beginning." So the dream could be limitless. You need somebody who's ahead of you. You've got 30 years experience on me, and I'm learning from that. So just the learning curve is greatly increased. I never thought I would have 50 million under construction within a year and a half, 2 years of meeting you. Just didn't cross my mind. So if it's a goal, if you're looking to reduce dentistry or use this to supplement dentistry, I think real estate's a great vehicle to do that. And you need coaching, you need mentorship. We all do it in dentistry. We all take CE courses. We know the hands-on courses are usually the best. This is your basically your hands-on course of real estate at just a level that I would have never expected.
Yeah, and what's really cool is, two things I hear from people. I get some people that say, "Oh, well, I want to get some things going first, and then maybe I'll, do mentorship." And what would you say to somebody who says, "I'm going to get out there and just kind of experiment first, and maybe learn on my own, and then bring on a mentor"?
Oh, I think the first project we worked on together would answer that right away. So I would have been 3.5 million more in site work, and 10 units less to sell. If I put a dollar amount on your mentorship, that's worth $5 million just from the first project that we worked on together. I mean, to me, it's worth a lot more. But if you had to put a dollar amount of what you saved for me on one project, so would you rather go and make that $5 million mistake, or would you rather spend something on mentorship and just make sure somebody who's done a lot more of this is looking over for your best interests from day one? I don't think it makes sense. I had no problem building anything. It's just having somebody who could take me through the steps of the entitlement process and make sure I'm not making large mistakes, because you can lose your shirt in development. You could really lose your shirt. And even if you don't lose your shirt by not having somebody mentoring you, you don't realize what you would have gained if you did have that mentorship.
Yeah, you're going to spend so much money just in the front end entitlement process. You're going to hire consultants all the way through and spend hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, depending on the size of your project. Why wouldn't you want somebody looking over your shoulder and just, helping you with what you don't know? Because that's really the biggest expense you have. So I saw a post you put out the other day talking about taxes. Like, a lot of people think, when you ask somebody, what is your biggest expense? Most people say taxes, or they say my mortgage, or they say, housing, or they say my ex-wife, kids, or whatever it is. The biggest expense you have is what you don't know.
I thought your response to that was great.
Yeah, it's what you don't know. And like what you just said right there, what you didn't know on that project could have potentially cost you $5 million. You haven't paid $5 million in taxes. If you do this right, you may never.
Yeah.
With your business, if you structure yourself correctly, which is another part of what we cover. But even more expensive than what you don't know is what you think you know that's just not true. As Mark Twain said, it ain't what you know that gets you. It's what you think you know that just ain't so.
Yeah, right. I think for Viking Capital, another part that he mentioned was it's the cost of mentorship is a rounding error. When you're talking about $50 million worth of development, the cost of having somebody look over everything that you're doing, it can be lost in a rounding error. So it's been more than worth it. And we have a friendship now. So you're on my board of advisors for every single project going forward. I couldn't ask for anything better than that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Simon, I appreciate it. I love what you're doing. It's fun to watch, people like you just, blossom and flourish and just get out there and take action and make it happen. And what's really cool about all this is what you think is hard before you ever get started. Once you've done it and you've got the system behind you, just like building your first practice, you're probably, oh man, it's so complicated, all the things and the details and the specs and just every little thing. But once you do it, it's like, wow, that wasn't that bad. Then now you got a system, and then you can just keep stamping it out. Now you've got this system. You've become and are becoming who you need to become. Then the next step is going to be the team. And then it's just going to be on autopilot, and you'll just be able to just keep going and going and going. And, you'll be looking back going, man, that was actually easy.
That's the goal. I mean, you keep telling me, don't take on small projects. It's, just as much work to take on 500 units as it is to take on 100 units. And to me, it took that, okay, we have to get the systems down, get the systems in place, and now we can multiply and have this grow. and it just makes sense after we've gone through a few of these now. That yeah, it's the same. It's repetition. It's over and over. Project might be a little bit different. Site might be a little bit different, but the beginning and the end goal is the same. And now to scale it, just a matter of putting a team together and letting it grow.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Next stop, 100 million.
There you go. Awesome. Thank you so much, Frank.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.